Hi, friends. I had an interesting experience this morning. Um, it sort of was a flash that came to me in meditation, and it definitely drew on a number of the ideas that I've been ingesting lately about the nature of the mind and what the function of the mind really is. And I've been listening to some really inspiring stuff, particularly Sadhguru's book, Inner Engineering, but also some other sources that are sort of playing into a picture of how the mind functions for me. And it's amazing. It's one of these, I'm having the experience a little bit of, it's almost like I've been driving a car for years and suddenly learning about all the different parts of a car. I have a loose understanding of how the engine works. I have a even looser understanding of how the transmission works. In most of these cases, I have a decent grasp, but if you asked me to build one, even if I could magically conjure any part I needed, I'd have a real hard time. So that's kind of what I'm experiencing with the mind, is like if I were to go and suddenly understand every aspect of my car, I would understand how it is I've been getting around all this time. And I might know a lot more of why things work the way they do. And that's kind of what I'm having with my mind, is I've been driving my mind all my life. Never even needed a license. And now I'm going, oh, that's how this works? That's how that happens? Oh. So my experience this morning, and this might be me. I'll just preface with that. I was sitting in meditation and I had this glimpse of the contents of my mind. As frequently happens in meditation, I get a sense of psychological action, stuff in the mind, and a deeper presence, which is vast and timeless and formless, and which I connect with, sometimes only partially, but I know it's there. And as soon as I even have the slightest impression of that, then the contents of the mind become distinct. I separate from them slightly. And this morning, the contents of my mind, I took a look at it and I went, oh, this is insane. My mind is insane. And what I mean by that is the content of my mind was completely irreconcilable with itself. It's like I have these competing impulses and these partial understandings of things that amount to a kind of there's no way out. There's no way for this combination of pieces to work out or to resolve into something higher. They're just blocks of kind of competing thought form. And the reason why I think the identification of insanity came to mind was because I was sensing, oh, my mind, this is the kind of like funny twist that it took. My mind is inherently insane. By which I mean the content of the mind on its own, if that's what I'm looking at, if that's really, if that's all there is, without that reservoir, without that space of awareness as a holding membrane around all that content, and without being able to back up off of the content of my mind and observe it with some distance, the impulse of the mind would be to kind of destroy itself. And this giant, the reason why I said this is linked into some of the reading I've been doing is because one of the things that Sadhguru said recently, forget what chapter of this book that I was in, but he talks about the mind is a dividing tool. That's the function of the mind. I mean, and this comes back to buddhi nature. The nature of the mind is to discriminate this and that. It's like a scalpel. It draws distinctions. That's what it does. It draws distinctions. So anything it looks at, this is what I think, loosely to paraphrase Sadhguru, he said, anything the mind regards, it's going to divide. And that's not good or bad. That is what the mind does. And as far as being a tool for our survival and a tool for promoting the kind of evolution of the species in a human being or in any other being, that's perfect. The mind is doing exactly what it's designed to do. There's nothing wrong with it. What can get problematic is if we think that dividing action and that discriminating, incising, going up and carving up the world thing, that act is going to ever lead us to wholeness, because obviously that can never happen via the mind. That's not what the mind does. And so when I saw this kind of like, just a momentary glimpse of like, it was like I saw the contents of my mind in like a giant like gelatin supplement capsule sitting out there in front of me. I was like, oh, yeah, the mind is insane. The content of the mind in and of itself on its own is insane. The only thing that brings sanity into the picture is the fact that the mind is not all there is. The fact that the mind is truly just one domain, one dimension of our being. But it provokes an understanding for me, because Sadhguru goes on and on about, he doesn't go on and on about, but he repeatedly emphasizes human beings live in psychological reality 99.9% of the time. Very, very, very rarely do we ever touch existential reality. But existential reality is everything else. It's that all-pervasive substrate, source of all domains of experience, including the mind. And if we look at the world, it starts to look a lot like it's being run by insane people. The world looks insane. If we look at how the world is operating right now, it's rather evident that it's insane. And I say that with zero judgment. And the weird thing is, everybody I have met seems like a sane person. Most of the people I meet, not everybody. I haven't met everybody in the world. I've met a good number, but I haven't met everybody. But I don't think that the reason why the world appears to be insane and why it appears evident that the way the world is being run is insane, I don't think that that's because the people that are actually doing all of this are literal psychopaths who need to be committed in an institution. I don't think that that's what's going on. I think that what's going on is we all live in the psychological realm most of the time. And the psychological realm unto itself is insane. Within one individual, we sort of find ways of repressing certain things and elevating other things, and just like our preferences kind of determine how we navigate the thicket of our own insane bubble of mind stuff. We ignore some things, we privilege other things, we do what we can to remain sane within the context of living in an environment, our mind, which is basically insane. So within an individual, we cannot notice so much that we're insane. We don't really see it. We're not really looking for it. We're trying our very best to be sane, to remain sane. But on a cultural level, where the outgrowths of everyone's actions are just a direct result of our psychological space that we're spending all of our time in, basically, that's where you can't avoid ultimately manifesting that insanity. There's no way around it. If all of our identities are within these bubbles of insanity, how could we expect the world to be an outgrowth of anything else? It makes no sense to assume that it would. It makes perfect sense to assume that the world will then look insane. So that's why me seeing a glimpse of my own mind and going, that's a crazy person's mind. That mind is crazy. That's insane. Is actually helpful, not because it makes me think that I need any more therapy than I'm already getting. It just makes me think sanity doesn't come from the mind. Sanity doesn't come from the mind. Sanity comes from a resonating at a completely different frequency of existence. You know, what Sadhguru would call existential reality, living that. Because when that happens, 99% of the mind's energy drains away, and now we can use it to cut the things, to discriminate among the things that we actually need to discriminate among. It performs a perfectly good function. You know, it's no longer a car just zooming down the highway with no one looking out the windshield or operating any of the controls, just running on, just receiving all the energy to do whatever that machine does automatically on its own. And I'm not talking about a self-driving Tesla. I'm talking about like a regular car. Just wanted to clarify my metaphor. But that's big. That's big to notice. It's big for me to notice. It's big. That connection when I saw my own mind, I was like, ugh. And then I went, oh. And then I went, oh, that's culture. This is one little tiny cog in the wheel of culture. No wonder the world looks crazy. Because that points me right back to the meditation cushion, right back to existential reality, right back to the ground, where we can use all of our tools effectively and lovingly. And maybe create a different kind of world. So what showed up this morning. Thanks for watching, folks. Much love. I appreciate you. Have a wonderful day. I'll see you tomorrow.